Hello and welcome to Type 1 Thursday with me, Hanna, one of the co-founders of the Low Carb Universe, and of course also a Type 1 since 34 years this year. Yay! Let's celebrate. That's a question actually for another Type 1 Thursday about diversities. Do you celebrate your diversity or do you not? I tend to not really, because I don't really see the point. But let's see. To keep that for another maybe live. Today we are talking about hypoglycemia, and that is for those who maybe aren't as in with the diabetes lingo. That is low blood sugars, when your blood sugar level drops too low, and you maybe won't be able to carry on as usual, but yes, this will also happen, of course, when you are low carb. This is no guard against lows and hypos, but I will tell you this, it will happen less because of the, of course, now legendary law of small numbers. So because you're not adding tons of insulin and not tons of sugar, you don't have that huge error margin. You, of course, are playing with the small tiny numbers. So you're playing with small amounts of sugar and small amounts of insulin so that you don't ever really dip that low. Anyway, so they do happen, they still happen, on and off for me. What has changed for me, of course, from when I was high carbing it and ate a load of carbs and therefore took a load of insulin, is that the amount of carbs needed to treat a hypoglycemic episode is, of course, a lot less. And I will go through this in a little bit to show you the comparison. But I just wanted to let you know that we are having another, of course, fantastic conversation about diabetes here on Type 1 Thursday today. Hypoglycemia is, of course, has different symptoms. You can be shaky, you can be have a bit of brain fog, you can't really think clearly, your vision can go blurry, you can there's so many different things that, for example, at times I've had that my nose goes tingly or my lip, but now I rarely, of course, experience these episodes, and when I do, they're not as low. Like my blood sugar level is not as low as it maybe has gone before. And also, what of course happens when you have a hypoglycemic episode is that you've taken too much insulin. There's nothing in the world that can cause you to hypo, but actually taking too much insulin for the required thing that you more than you needed in that specific example. So, for example, maybe you took a little too much for the meal that you just had, or maybe because of exercise you got extra insulin sensitive, so that you're anyways taking too much insulin. There's so many variables that can make you sort of overdose on insulin, but just, you know, apart from just shooting up too much. So yes, there are many reasons for why, but there's only one sort of correlation as to why you get a hypoglycemic episode, and that is that you're taking too much insulin in comparison to your needs, and that's it. What I think is very interesting when you do go low carb and have lower blood sugars than desired is actually that ketones, and this has been proven in some fancy study or another, that ketones actually seem to have a cognitive protection for your brain. So even if your blood sugar is low and you don't have enough, let's call it that, sugar in your system, your brain will still function because it is also fueled by ketones. So it always has fuel rather than relying on only sugar, which is, of course, a little bit, well, maybe not ideal. It's always nice to have double fuel sources for your pretty little brain to keep busy with. And of course, what is the definition of a hypoglycemia? This is something that we can debate, you know, forever because it is very, very individual. So for me, for example, I think the official one is under 3.9 millimoles, which is about times 18, which is about 60, is the lower limit. So I think that is and anything under that should be treated as a hypoglycemia. And the conventional method, of course, of treating hypoglycemia is to eat 15 grams of carbs, wait 15 minutes, measure again, and repeat if necessary. That is what is taught to all of us diabetics out there. I have figured out that I maybe need something a little bit different than that specific method, but then again, I don't do things by the book anyway, do I? So no surprises there. I actually, because my carb sensitivity has gone up so much, I'm so sensitive to carbs now because I don't eat them too often. I don't really need this sensitivity that much. So that's something I'm happy about, because in return my insulin sensitivity has gone up like crazy. So I'm happy about that. But what I usually do is if I measure a low, or if I have my CGM tells me that I have a low, I will take, listen to this, 2 grams of glucose, or maybe 4 if it's really, really low. And then I will be fine within about half an hour. And because I can keep cognitive for very, how do I say this without getting into trouble? At relatively low measurements, I can still stay cognitive. I don't mind waiting that, instead of shoving everything in my face like I have done many, many times. When I was high carbing, I sometimes needed 25 to 50 carbs to treat a low, because I simply had that much insulin swerving around in my system and not being too much for me, of course. So that's why I needed so many carbs to treat back then. And now I need 2, 4, maybe, if it's a really bad one, I will need 6, but that's sort of 6 grams of glucose, and that's sort of within an hour. And this is where we're coming to what maybe is low for me, which is different. I don't generally treat until sort of around the 3.0 mark. So that would be, 60 about. Okay, so 3.9, 4-ish is about 75, 80, and 3.0 is about 60. So I don't really treat unless I'm sort of at 60, and that also depends on if I'm at home or if I'm out and about. If I'm at home, I can take my time treating it. I don't have to, hurry up and get into a safe zone, but that's different, of course, if I'm out and about. And then I take 2 grams of glucose. I will not suspend, but minimize the bolus, the basal on my pump, so that it is at 10 or 20%, so that it doesn't keep giving me insulin during my low as well. But then that usually is enough to get me up to a safe sort of 4.0, so 80 to 100 to 5.0. And this is sort of where I feel the best as well. So I don't want to overcorrect it either, because this is not comfortable, and this is of course where the most damage happens to your system as well, with either continuously high blood sugars or jumping blood sugars. So I try to avoid those 2 things as much as possible, which is why I don't I try not to overtreat my hypos as well when they do happen, which is not very often anymore. And so what I do, I told you what I do. What I use is I do not raid my kitchen over there and find whatever I want to eat, because this is the opportunity to just eat all these things that I normally can't, because then I would be over-treating it. And anyone who has had a hypoglycemic episode or a low blood sugar, that is, of course, it's a terrible feeling. It's an absolutely terrible feeling, and you want your natural instinctive is to just stuff your face with as much food as possible, so to be safe. and to get your blood sugar into a safe range. But I have relearned this. I actually had a period of my life where I was really, really afraid of hypos. So I knowingly kept my blood sugar at a higher rate, which I don't recommend either, because that didn't work out either as everything else that I tried back then. So what I do now is I keep my calm, because I know I have this alternative fuel source that will keep fueling my brain until the very, very end, which is, of course, ketones. But if it does happen, and this is not a sponsored post, I pay with my own little cents and dollars for these. But what I do is that I take 1 or 2 of these, which I can find in any sort of pharmacy here in where I live in Switzerland. So actually not cents and dollars, but then rappen and francs, to be absolutely precise. But yes, one of these is 2.2 grams of pure glucose. And I take one of these, and then I put my pump on a minimum bolus basal rate, and then I retreat after sort of 25 to 30 minutes if it hasn't changed. I want to show you my favorite flavor as well, which is blueberry yogurt. If you, I know that the taste of glucose tabs isn't fantastic ever. They do taste like chalk. They don't have very imaginative flavors, but this one is actually the best one out there. And as I see it, this is just another medicine that I need to, well, actually save my life, save my own life at times. So I don't see it as an opportunity to stuff my face or treat myself to anything. It's just another, part of medicine that I need in order to be well. That is, of course, how I treat my normal hypos. I haven't touched a little wood here. I haven't had hypoglycemia where I need help from other people in very many years since I actually started low carbing. Those have completely disappeared. Before, it used to be a lot because, of course, I was playing with a lot of insulin in my system, active insulin in my system, and that is, of course, sometimes a recipe for disaster. So this is but of course I also have, as I spoke about in the previous episode, I have of course also a glucagon kit in the kitchen so that it's easily reachable for my husband, for example, who is mostly the one who's here with me, or for myself if I would really need it. And this could be, of course, a case of really life and death, and this is where the glucagon activates the liver to push out its extra sugars and the glycogen storage, and that's how the blood sugar raises itself. Well, not by itself, but how it's prompted to raise with a glucagon kit. And those are always good to have around in case, because you never know how you're going to react to something. So in case something isn't going to plan, then it's good to have one of those. And you can actually, which is in emergency cases, you can also mini dose these. So for example, if you have a stomach bug or something and can't keep anything down, but if you can keep down liquids, then maybe you don't have to go to the hospital straight away, although that is a very good idea if you can't keep down liquids. But this could be a treatment option then as well. I know I've also read that they're working on a nasal glucagon sort of thing, so you like a nasal spray to activate the glycogen storages that way, which I think would be fantastic, because that mechanism of filling a glucagon kit can be quite intimidating, and luckily I have drilled this into my husband's brain. So he would be able to do it in the case of an emergency. But normally I can do with 1 or 2 or maybe 3 of these if it's really bad, and I am happy. As I said, this is not a fun topic because hypoglycemias are very, very, very uncomfortable, and even more so when you are maybe with people who don't quite understand what is going on and stuff. But as long as you know that you can treat your own hypos, then you are pretty much all right to go and enjoy everything. Anyway, I love that you were here with me today, that you're watching, that you are sharing, subscribing, all of these things. Thank you so much for the hearts and the likes and the loves. And I'll be back next week with another episode of Type 1 Thursday. I'll see you then.